So today we will learn from Nicole Stevens, who is a research and development scientist at doTERRA. She has been conducting research with essential oils for more than 15 years. She has a bachelor's degree in technical writing and a master's degree in botany and integrative biology from Brigham Young University. She has worked in quality control laboratories in the nutraceutical industry, as well as academic research laboratories at the University of Utah and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Cancer Research Institute. In addition to this research, she has also taught courses in chemistry and biochemistry at Brigham Young University, Idaho, and also the University of Nevada. So she's very dedicated to share her knowledge and helping us advancing our understanding of the essential oils. And it's a great pleasure to have you here. So the stage is yours.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am going to share my screen. Well, I am trying to think about what would be interesting to talk about today. I mean, we could spend so much time talking about essential oils, and we will. And I'm excited to do that. But in speaking a little bit with your leaders and the doTERRA folks who are there over your markets, we thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about some of the questions that people might have, especially if they're new to using essential oils. And so we've gathered in some of the most commonly asked questions about essential oils. Maybe you have them yourself, or maybe as you're sharing and talking about essential oils, some of your people might have these questions. So hopefully this can kind of empower you to feel more confident in talking about essential oils, and maybe it will inspire you to do some additional learning on your own about the essential oils. So that's the hope and the plan for today. That was a great introduction by Oliver. Thank you so much. In the time that, I think that's a little bit of an old bio, I actually have my doctorate degree now in biochemistry from the University of Miami at the Miller School of Medicine there. And it was so much fun to do that degree. And I got to do it using essential oils in my research. So my research project was about the internal use of essential oils. And I know not all markets allow that currently. Here in the US, we do use essential oils internally, but we need a lot more information about what that does, like how the body reacts and how to do that safely. So that was a lot of my doctorate research. It was a lot of fun. And we're now continuing some of that research here at the corporate offices, and hopefully there'll be some publications that are coming out soon that you'll be able to see on that and share with people who are interested. So as Oliver mentioned, I do some product formulation, and my main job function here at doTERRA is currently clinical research. So again, thinking about how essential oils affect the human body and how, of the three ways that oils can be used, aromatically, topically, and internally, these are all different and they have different effects on our bodies. And we need to study this a lot. So that's some of what I get to do every day, and it's so much fun. And I integrate a lot with the product development team and the operations and sourcing teams. So we are definitely kind of at the heart of what doTERRA is doing right now with our scientific endeavors. And I love it. I am excited to see where essential oil science is going to be taking us. And in today's presentation about some of these questions, you'll see that people are interested in the science of essential oils, and we want to be able to provide some of those answers. So let's dive right in, and let's talk about some of the questions that people ask that they're curious about. Now, we collect these questions. Sometimes people write in to doTERRA, to the product support line, and they ask questions there, or they call on the phone. a lot of times at our various conventions and global events, we'll have people come and ask us questions. And so we kind of take a note of these, we write them down and get a feel for what people really want to know. And that's where some of these questions have come from. So hopefully you'll see something here that maybe you've wondered about, or someone that you have talked to has wondered about, and then you'll have some answers to share. So, of course, one of the big questions, what makes doTERRA different? How can we say our oils are the purest on the market? How can we have confidence in the oils that bear the doTERRA label? Now, this is a great question. I think it's really fundamental to what doTERRA is and what they stand for. doTERRA has made a quality standard called CPTG, where it is intended to be really the highest quality standard that can be found. In a lot of ways, it's higher than other standards that are out there. You may have heard of ISO, or you may have heard of an organic standard, things like that. This actually goes beyond the stringent requirements of those kind of standards. The way that we can guarantee this, the way that we know our oils are pure, really comes down to kind of two main things. Number one is the way that we source our essential oils. And you've probably heard about the co-impact sourcing model. When doTERRA first started, they knew that the oils on the market were often adulterated. They came from brokers, and their source, where they were grown or where they were harvested, wasn't always entirely clear. And we knew we wanted to be right on the source with the farmers and the distillers, so that we knew exactly where our oil was coming from, and we could guarantee its purity, and we could trace it clear back to the fields where it was grown. So that's the first step. We start with a good product. And then the second step is we test it and test it and test it. And you may have heard of some of the tests that are done, but we have at our disposal almost 100 different tests that can be run on essential oils if needed. And we do tests on every batch of essential oils that comes through. And by testing it in many different ways, really, GCMS, you've probably heard of, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. That's one of the standards that we do on every single essential oil. And then we add other tests like microbiology and stability and FTIR, and we have refractive index, and we have specific gravity, and we have all of these tests that we line up. Each one of them tells us a piece of the purity story. So by the time they get to the end of their testing, we know what's in them and we know what's not in them, like heavy metals and pesticides and adulterants. So this is how doTERRA goes about helping you to feel confident in your oils and helping you to know that when you're sharing them with other people, you really are sharing the best. So you can boil it down to those two things and talk to people all day long about our sourcing and our testing. And that's really kind of what that purity standard comes down to. Okay, next. How much plant material is required to make an essential oil? Now, this, interestingly, kind of ties into the whole idea of why are essential oils expensive? Sometimes I can go and just get something off the shelf of the grocery store for a few dollars. Why are doTERRA essential oils more expensive than that? It comes down to the answer to this question. Plant material. And oils are a small percent of the plant. So in order to get a bottle of essential oil, it takes a lot of plant material. Now, it does depend on the plant that we're talking about, how much oil it takes. And, in general, the oils are found in these microscopic little sacs in various places on the plant. Sometimes the leaves, sometimes the bark, the roots, the fruits, the flowers, or a combination of these things. Okay, but remember, the sacs are very microscopic where the plants store them. And different types of plants store different amounts of essential oils. So think about the family of spices, for example, black pepper or cardamom or cinnamon. For whatever reason, these plants store larger sacs. They're pretty big in terms of an essential oil storage area. Other things like flowers and leaves, their sacs are very, very small, and there may not be as many of them. So, just to give you some examples, I wrote down some of the amounts of plant material that it takes. For lavender, we all love lavender, right? For every 100 grams, approximately, every 100 grams of plant material, only a half a gram or less of essential oil is produced. It has a yield of around 0.5%. That's pretty small, right? So think of all the fields and fields and fields of lavender that must be harvested in order to provide all the doTERRA essential oil. That's a lot. Cardamom, I mentioned, it has a yield, it can be as much as 5%. So now for every 100 grams of cardamom, we may get 5 grams of essential oil, which is great. Our spices tend to yield a lot more. Now, they sometimes are harder to harvest just because, you've got all these little pods and all these little, tiny things that we might have to harvest and keep track of. But again, they do have a higher yield, which is great. Now, flowers, so think about rose. It can have a yield of 0.0001%, which means it can take, maybe 10,000 petals of rose that we can distill to just get a tiny bottle of essential oil. So keep that in mind when you're looking at a pure essential oil. Is it coming from actual plants? If so, it will cost more, but it's worth it because it's not synthetic and it's not adulterated and it's pure essential oil. So you can tell that to people as you're talking about them too. You do get what you pay for when it comes to essential oils. How do essential oils work? A lot of people want to know this. They want to know if they're purchasing an essential oil that just smells good, or is it actually worthwhile? Does it have some worth? Does it work? Essential oils, we know, can interact with the body, and they have very positive effects for the most part. Now, this is a question really that would take an entire day worth of lecture to truly answer. But in essence, the answer is they work by interacting with our biochemistry. And I love biochemistry. It's what I kind of studied and love. So just say that, biochemistry, that's how they work. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper, the essential oil molecules, they are called lipophilic, which means they love dissolving in fat. And you've probably seen this if you've ever used olive oil or fractionated coconut oil to mix in with your essential oils. They just mix right in. They like dissolving into fat. Now, the good news is the cells of our bodies, they are surrounded by a layer of fat cells, have little fat molecules. And so the oils can interact with that. In even more general terms, we know that when we smell things, essential oils or cooking food or really anything, that has effects on our brain, on how we think and how we feel. And there's lots of research to support that. But again, it's biochemistry. It's how those essential oils are interacting with our brains and with our bodies. So you can give someone a really simple answer if they ask you that question, but then it requires them to go do a little bit more work, question that they have. If they have a specific benefit they'd like to use essential oils for, it's good for people to go and do that research and learn. But in general, biochemistry is the answer to that question. Okay, another question we commonly get, which essential oil should I use? And usually that question comes to us with the intention of someone having a specific benefit or sometimes a specific medical problem. And they say, which essential oil should I use for this or for that? Now, the real answer is we can't answer that specific question. Essential oils are intended to be supplements. They are not marketed to be medicines that can cure things or diagnose things or anything like that. So we have to be careful when we get this question. And we have to help people understand that medical advice of that kind needs to happen in a conversation with a healthcare provider. But the good news is that more and more healthcare providers are becoming interested in supplements and in essential oils. And they're starting to see that there are benefits to having these as part of our lifestyle. So if someone asks you this question as you're talking, encourage them to open the conversation with a healthcare provider, to do their research and then talk to their doctor about it. We have heard many, many stories of people doing this very thing, and they're able to supplement what their doctors are doing. They're able to improve their life and their lifestyle using essential oils. And that's an important point to make, because, each person's genetics and their medical history and things like that are going to be very individual to them. So it's wise to not necessarily make recommendations, but certainly when someone asks me this question, I share with them my experience, what I have been able to, which oils I like to use and what I use them for. So there's a couple ways you can take this question, and it can turn into a very good conversation. Now, if you do want some additional help and resources, of course, the doTERRA website has a lot of great information on it. And we'll get to a little bit deeper on that later, but keep that in mind that there are some very great places to start if you're not quite sure where to start or where to direct someone when they have a question like this. An important one: how much essential oil is too much? Now, this is a tricky one because there are quite a few things that this depends upon. It depends upon which oil you're talking about. It depends on how you're using it. Are you using it topically, aromatically, or where it's allowed internally? Are you using other products or things along with it? Things like medicine or things like other supplements, even some foods. Is it going to be a one-time use, like you need it for something specific, or is it something that you want to use every day? And then what about your health? What about your environment? What about your genetics? So it's really hard to answer a question like this for everyone all the time. Let me give you some general ideas though. A good rule of thumb, a good kind of easy thing to remember when it comes to essential oils is less is more, usually. Remember our conversation about the amount of plant material that it takes to make an essential oil. We are concentrating the chemistry of that plant into a tiny, tiny amount. So a single drop of essential oil is extremely concentrated and represents a lot of plant. It doesn't take very much. So don't be afraid to only use a little bit and still find the benefits that you're looking for. And another thing to remember, it's better to use little amounts over time, for the most part, than to have a whole bunch all at once. Our bodies are better able to process really anything if we have small amounts over time. And maybe you've seen this too if you have tried to do better at drinking water, for example. It's better to take your water over time. Your body can process it and use it better. The same is true for essential oils. A little bit over time tends to be better. So you can definitely answer if a person asks you this question, little bits over time, and to pay attention to the oil that they're using, pay attention to how their body responds to it, and they'll be able to get a feel for what is going to be beneficial for them. And again, healthcare providers are a wonderful resource to have a conversation like this with, especially if there are other things involved in a person's particular medical history. And that leads us into our next question. Do essential oils interfere or interact with my medication? We get this question a lot. If people are taking a medication for their heart disease or for anything really, they want to use an essential oil, but they want to use it safely. And we want them to use it safely too. So again, the answer to this question and to a lot of questions that involve anything medical is to make sure that they are having a conversation with their healthcare provider. Now, this is not only important so that they can use their essential oils and supplements safely, but because the healthcare provider will want to know what kinds of supplements they're using. It's part of their health record. So we know that some essential oils can potentially have these interactive effects with certain medications. Not always in a bad way. Sometimes they actually can enhance the activity of some medications according to research. So very important conversation for them to have if there's anything medical involved. Just kind of in general, bodies process anything that we take from the outside and they metabolize it and use it in the ways that are needed. And we call these xenobiotics. That means anything from the outside that's coming in that's of plant origin. So if you've got a xenobiotic that's a drug and a xenobiotic that's an essential oil, our body is going to process them very much the same way. And what we don't want to do is have those two things interact in ways that aren't helpful for the body. So good conversation. And, at doTERRA, we can be a resource for these things as well. I know people have written in with specific questions about different interactions of this sort. We don't always have the answer. To be perfectly honest, that's part of my job, is to do some of this research and find these answers. Essential oils being used in the way that they are is still pretty new, especially when it comes to these interactions with medication, some of which have not been around for very long. So we're doing research right now to help us understand how our bodies process the essential oils, how they may interact with various medications. And we hope to continue providing this kind of information that will be very concrete answers for healthcare providers. And more of that is certainly coming every day that we're doing this research. So this question gets to be kind of still in the realm of the healthcare provider, and hopefully we can support that as we go along. Another very important one: can essential oils be used on kids? And if so, which ones? We get this question quite a bit. And I'm glad that we do, because I think, and there's research to support, that essential oils can be very beneficial for children. But caution is definitely needed. Children are not small adults. They have different metabolism. They have different skin. They have different, even taste buds, different receptors, different brains. Everything about them is not like a mini adult. So in general, when essential oils are used on kids, you have to be very careful to dilute the essential oil. Their skin is much more sensitive in general than adult skin is. It is thinner, it is more delicate. So when I use essential oils with my kids, we dilute, and we'll use a carrier oil like fractionated coconut oil or olive oil or something to make sure that the essential oil isn't too concentrated. And remember, you're still getting that benefit. These concentrated essential oils will deliver the benefit even if they're in a carrier oil. Another thing to keep in mind, they're certainly more strong, maybe is a good word, and you may have to dilute them even more. If you think about oils like oregano or cinnamon or clove even, these are essential oils that are extremely powerful in ways that you need to make sure that you understand before you use them with kids. Not to say you shouldn't, but that they just need to be maybe diluted even a little bit more than you normally would. Supervision is going to be very important when you're using essential oils with kids. My kids are all a little bit older, so they are pretty confident using the essential oils now. But when they were smaller, ages 4, 5, 6, I would definitely make sure that they would use essential oils with me so that I could help them know the safe ways to use the essential oils and they could use them safely. And doTERRA helps out with that, with the kids blends. If they are available in your area, they are amazing. They are already pre-diluted in their little roller bottles. And those are what I prefer to use with my kids. They are what we usually use at night. I'll come in and we'll roll on those essential oils and massage them in, have some conversations. It really is a great opportunity to bond with kids. So yes, essential oils can be used on kids as long as it's done properly. So make sure if someone asks you this question as you're sharing, that they understand some of those important things so that they can use them safely on kids. And definitely one last thing about that, to make sure that the oils are stored out of the reach, out of the sight of children, so that they can, not be spilled or not be put on and used without that supervision. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, that the bottles are very pretty. They smell very good. We don't want kids to get into them if they're not supervised. Can I be allergic to essential oils? This is a question that we sometimes get, and people genuinely are curious because there are a great number of allergies that people might have to peanuts or dairy or wheat or shellfish or anything like that. The answer to this question is people aren't allergic to essential oils in the typical sense, because essential oils don't have protein at all. Usually when someone is allergic to an essential oil, or allergic in general, it's to a protein, like the protein that's in wheat or the protein that's in eggs, something like that. Essential oils don't have protein, most of them, or any of them that I can think of. However, sometimes we can build up a certain kind of allergy, especially for topical application. And that's simply when little chemicals in the essential oil bond with some of our body proteins. So there's the protein part. And that is something that we can become allergic to over time. It's not very common, thank goodness. But again, going back to that idea of understanding the oil that you're using and of using it with a carrier oil, if you know that your skin is sensitive, things like that can help make it so that we don't have reactions on the skin, and that those allergic type of reactions don't build up over time, right? It comes back to knowledge, to gaining some of that understanding so that you can use essential oils safely. But in terms of allergens, the way people think about them, those big 8 allergens that you'll typically see on food labels or whatever, essential oils do not cause allergies in that way. Why are there so many essential oils that seem to do the same thing? We sometimes get this because people aren't sure which oil they want to use. They might say, I want an oil for relaxation. And they see that lavender and clary sage and ylang-ylang and coriander and so on, all these essential oils are good for relaxation. So they're nervous, they're confused. Which oil do I pick? So the answer to this question is chemistry. Right? I answered one question earlier with biochemistry. Now I'm answering with chemistry. The chemistry of the essential oils is different, even among oils that have similar effects on the body. And if you know about essential oil chemistry, you know that essential oils are made up of dozens and sometimes hundreds of different small chemicals. And that's how they're made in nature. That's how the flowers and the plants make them. Because we have different genes, and because the chemistry of the oil is different, those effects may be a little bit different for each person. And there's also a matter of preference. So for example, lavender is one of the most widely known essential oils for relaxation. But funny enough, it's not one of my favorite aromas. I don't know why. Not that I hate it, it's just not my absolute favorite. So when I want something for relaxation, I'll look for something that has a chemistry that works with my body and that I enjoy the aroma of. And that's where it's fun, because people get to experiment a little bit and see what works best for their body. What chemistry of essential oil works best with biochemistry of their body. And then you might find something like bergamot or bergamot, however you pronounce that, which is one of my favorite essential oils for relaxation. That chemistry works very well with biochemistry of my body. So encourage people to try some essential oils and find one that works for them, and explain to them that we have so many essential oils and they sometimes overlap because those chemistries are different and because the biochemistries of our bodies are very different. We want people to be able to have options and to find something that works beautifully for them. So that's where it can be very fun. and you can help them understand how to do some of that experimentation with the benefits they're looking for. What's the best way to store essential oils? Sometimes we have people who ask, should I be storing my essential oils in the fridge or in the freezer? Can I keep one in my car? The best way to store essential oils is somewhere cool and dark, and of course out of the reach of children. And the reason for that is essential oils, because they are volatile molecules, which means they evaporate very easily, they are sensitive to heat, and they are sensitive to sunlight that can come down and cause them to be excited and to evaporate off. So if you're storing your essential oils, it's best to do them somewhere where they'll be protected from light and heat. And the amber bottle that they come in, that dark orange-brown color, helps protect against some of the light that could come in and have negative effects on the oil. So it's a great way to store them, just right in the bottle. If you do put it into a different kind of bottle, it's encouraged to have it be another dark or colored glass so that it can be protected from light in that same way. And one thing to keep in mind as you store your essential oils, hopefully you're using them and the amount of oil in the bottle gets smaller and smaller. Now, the air that comes above that oil is called headspace. And as you get more and more headspace, you actually are opening up the potential of the oil to what we call oxidize. If you've ever seen an apple turn brown after it's been cut, or if you've seen metal rust, those are examples of oxidation. And oils can be susceptible to this as well. And it doesn't typically cause bad things to happen, but it can change the aroma a little bit, and it can change the chemistry of the oil a little bit. So definitely, if you're using your essential oils and you've had one that's been sitting on the shelf for several years and it has a lot of headspace, a lot of oxygen on top, you may notice that it smells a little bit different. So keep that in mind, and that can be a reason why we want to keep those oils as protected as we possibly can and to use them up, to not let them sit too long on a shelf with, still a little bit left in the bottle and then years later want to use that up. But still, I do that as well sometimes. So we'll get into a question a little bit later about if it's okay to still use those. And the answer is, like many of these things, it does kind of depend. Can doTERRA supplements and oils be used together? We have people who want to use lots of the supplements and lots of the essential oils, and that's great. And I'm one of those. I actually do use quite a few of the doTERRA supplements, and I love oils. I don't know if you can see my oil rack back here, and I've got another one in my house. But the answer is, in most cases, yes. And a lot of that depends on what benefits you want to get from your supplements and from your oils. But some things to keep in mind, of course, how much are you using? We talked about needing to use small bits over time as opposed to a lot all at once. So when I take my supplements, I usually do them several times throughout the day. And when I use my oils, I'll use small amounts throughout the day. Maybe I'll put some on in the morning when I'm getting ready for work, and I'll put some more on in the middle of the day when I need a little bit of a pick-me-up. Maybe I'll diffuse something during part of the day and then diffuse a different oil when I get home at night. You can find great ways to use these products throughout the day and to integrate them into your lifestyle. And I think you'll find that they're a great support and that they really do work well together. And again, doTERRA wants to help people understand how to use products and make it easy. So think about the Digest Zen or Zengest line of products, where there's different products. There's an oil you can diffuse, and there's a supplement that can be taken, and a few things like that. Or the Adaptive line of products, if you've got that in your market, you've got your supplement and you've got an oil blend and a diffuser blend. These are ways that you can integrate these two things and really find some support in a lot of different ways, a lot of different systems of the body. So, and again, it's great if you're going to be using supplements and essential oils, good conversation to have with a healthcare provider so that they're aware and that they can also kind of help give advice, really good advice based on your medical history. So that's a great thing to keep in mind as you're talking to people, or if they ask you a question like this. We get the question a lot of which essential oils are best for skincare. And I love this question because we have so many. We have so many oils that are excellent for use on the skin. And again, keeping in mind the idea of not wanting it to be too concentrated, because the skin of the face tends to be a little bit thinner than skin elsewhere on the body. So you don't want to overdo it. But there are a number of wonderful essential oils that can be used on the skin in conjunction with a skincare routine. So part of it depends on the benefits you're looking for, and part of it depends on your individual skin. But some of the ones that I really enjoy using, I will put Siberian fir in with my moisturizer, and that kind of helps even out the skin tone, make it look nice and even and calmed down a little bit. Sometimes I'll get a little bit red in the face when I'm getting stressed or frustrated. Flower oils like ylang ylang or jasmine are wonderful for kind of aging skin, especially. It kind of can help support that aging process. And lavender, wonderful for soothing the skin. I'll sometimes put this in a spray after my kids have been outside during the summer and they're just feeling kind of hot and sticky and they need some soothing on their skin. Lavender is a really good one for that. And of course, doTERRA has some amazing skincare products that already have essential oils in them. So those essential oils have been very well researched for their skin benefits. So if you're curious, look at the labels of those products, and those are some of the best oils that you can use for skincare. Things like frankincense and cedarwood and lavender, we mentioned, a few things like that. Fantastic for supporting the health of your skin. And really fun to experiment with in different ways. If you're wanting to use an oil you've never used before, we recommend to people to test just a tiny little bit, to make sure that you're not going to be sensitive to it and that it will be okay on your skin before you maybe do your whole face and your neck and things like that. We want to make sure that you're able to use the oil safely and enjoy its benefits. What are my favorite essential oils? Let me throw out a few to you. And if you have not tried them, I'm going to say you should try them because they're amazing. Spearmint, here in the picture. We don't talk very much about spearmint, and I'm sad about that because spearmint is amazing. It's one of my favorite essential oils for relaxation. It's one of the ones that I carry around in my bag and use it a lot. My kids all love it, which is great. It's hard to find one that everybody likes, but this is one that we love. Some other ones, bergamot, I've mentioned, is one of my go-to for relaxation during the day. Rosemary, that one's not one that you hear very much about, but this one I like to use in my cooking. I use it as a flavoring agent. I like to use it in certain kind of skin salves that I'll put on my skin. I like to make myself. Of course, I've mentioned the kids blends. Those ones we use pretty much every day. So if you're not familiar with those, and if you can get them, you should, because they're fantastic. Even if you don't have kids, I like to use them on myself. They're wonderful blends, and they are well named for what they're intended to kind of help out with and what they're intended to do. Of course, peppermint. This one I like to put into my tea. I like to diffuse that. I'll sometimes rub it on my skin in the middle of the day to help pick me up if I'm feeling tired. So we can have presentations talking about any of these for an entire hour probably. So I think if I'm invited to talk to you guys again, anything that we've talked about today, I would love to talk about in greater detail, and hopefully we've spurred some thoughts in your mind and some ways that you can be able to talk confidently to people when you're sharing the essential oils. And I hope that's helpful to you, and I appreciate your time today. So I'll turn it back over to Oliver.
Oh my goodness, Nicole, this is so amazing and deep, but also very understandable. So I think the magic how you present is in helping us to understand complex science in a great way. So even I understood stuff. So it's a great. My wife keeps telling me if Oliver understands, everybody understands it. So it was great. So guys, I hope you make some notes. Nicole, it felt like you are a living and walking essential oil and encyclopedia. Thank you very much for preparing these answers. And I would like everybody to know here that when I reached out to Nicole, she didn't just take out one of her ready-to-use presentations, but she specifically asked me, hey, Oliver, what are the questions that the people have? And I asked many leaders, many of you, and I collected those questions. So this presentation was created specifically for you. So thank you, Nicole, for putting the time and the effort to serve specifically our needs and personalize your message to us. So it was amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you guys for being here. Make sure that you tag your team members when we post this recording in the various Facebook groups. And see you guys next week. Nicole, thank you very much for being here. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. You too.